everyone, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Alana and this is my husband.
My name is Joran.
This is his first time on our channel. Today we decided to do a video about foster care. When people find out that we are foster parents, we get lots of questions about it, and so we decided it might be a fun idea to do a little series about why we became foster parents and just some info for any people who are interested or curious about foster care.
So we have a list of questions that I haven't seen yet, and we're going to walk through them and answer them as best we can.
So before we start answering these questions, I actually want to talk a little bit about our experience doing foster care. So we currently foster 1.5-year-old twin girls. We've had them from birth. We got them 2 weeks out of the hospital.
They are an absolute blast. We love being able to take care of them and see them run around the house and get into all sorts of crazy things. Yeah, I'm trying not to share too much of the details because a lot of that is protected.
We love having them. We have such a full, happy house. They bring us a lot of joy. They're also a lot of work. My 3 and 4-year-old are a year apart. When we got the twins, I was like, I got this. I dealt with a newborn and a 1-year-old, and so this is gonna be super easy. It should be pretty similar to having twins, and it was not similar to having twins. Having twins is like a whole new ball game. It was definitely an adjustment in the beginning. We made it through those first couple months. That was definitely the hardest. These girls are our first placement, and so we're new to this whole foster care experience at the time. We're still pretty new since we're still on our first placement, but so far experience has been pretty positive. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
No, there's definitely some things about it that are difficult, which I'm sure we'll get into later. For the most part, I think after the twins are reunified with their parents, then I think we will still continue to take in more children. So for those of you who don't know, I just want to touch a little bit on what foster care actually is. Babe.
Oh, I have to touch on it.
Yeah.
Foster care is opening up your home to kids whose parents are unable to take care of them temporarily. And then what happens is the government or the state gets control of the kids or get custody of the children, and then they try to find family members initially or kin that are willing to take them in. And if that's not possible, then they have a community or a network of foster parents, which you become a part of as a foster parent, and then you get called for a placement. So once you get the foster kid, you kind of learn, typically when they arrive, you don't really know what the situation is. You kind of hear that from the caseworker as the first couple of weeks go on, and then the goal is always for the child to go back to the birth parent. So that's called reunification.
It doesn't always end in reunification, and if that happens, then the parental rights will be terminated, and that child is then up for adoption. And as foster parents, you become sort of first in line to adopt these children since you already have a relationship with them. Oftentimes, or sometimes, family will step up and they can go to like a grandparent or an aunt and an uncle, but generally it's just providing a safe home for children who do not have one.
One of the things I liked when we were talking through the training or getting the training was that they said they want to reduce the amount of traumatic experiences for the kids as much as possible. Whenever a kid is taken from a home and moved somewhere else, that is a traumatic event, and so they typically ask the foster family if they would be willing to adopt the kids should that situation arise. And so that's why the foster family is typically first in line. And you don't have to go into it thinking that you're going to adopt. You could just say, all right, we're just fostering until they're able to find a permanent family.
They have a foster care license, and then they have foster to adopt license. And so we have a foster to adopt license, which doesn't mean that we're taking in kids with the intent of adopting them. It just means that if that child cannot go back to their parents, that we are willing and able to provide a permanent home for them. So the most common question we get asked when people find out that we're foster parents is, why did you become foster parents? I will let him answer this first question.
First they ask us how old we are.
Yeah, that's true.
And then they're like, you guys are crazy.
Yeah.
Why we want to foster is we're both Christians, and it's one of the ways that we want to live out our faith and help kids that are in need. I think God has blessed us with a lot of capabilities and resources to be able to do that, and so we both felt called to do that. Alana's the best mom ever, so I'm just happy I get to support her whenever I can in doing it.
Yeah. And we always knew, we dated back in college, and we always knew that we wanted to either adopt or do foster care, but I was sort of not into the idea of foster care, which I'll talk about later. We really just wanted to adopt. And then when we started looking into options for adoption, we started going to meetings to find out more about international adoption versus domestic adoption. And then we started hearing more about foster care through that. And then God sort of laid it on our hearts that foster care was the way that He wanted us to go.
It's also something that I was familiar with, so my parents did foster care when we were growing up. So I've had plenty of foster siblings. And initially we didn't really want to do foster care to begin with because we wanted to round out our kids. We would like to have 4 kids. And so we went to all these adoption sessions, and we were kind of asking, like, is there a really big need? And one of the sessions we were at, they said, well, we had 6 children that were adopted last year, and we have 25 families that are waiting for kids. On the drive back from that session, I think we were talking to each other, like, it doesn't really seem like there's a need. But we also know that through foster care, you don't necessarily always adopt. And so we needed to be okay with that the main goal was going to be reunification with the parents. But there's also typically a big chance that it could end up in adoption. And so if there is ever a child that we're fostering that would need to be adopted, then that is something that our house would be open to, given the fact that we have 2 kids. And so we're trying to get to 4. And so we figured based on that, we were at a good point in our lives where we could do it.
And I think it's much easier for agencies to find people who are willing to adopt, because a lot of people, you hear them say, like, I could never do that. I was one of those people, which is why I wanted to do adoption and not foster care, where I was like, there's no way I could give up a kid after having them for like a year or 2. That's too hard. And while that's true, that's definitely a difficult part of foster care. It's really where the need is. And adoption is awesome. People who adopt are awesome. You're still making a huge difference. But we just felt like for us, the need, at least in our area, was really with foster care. That's where they didn't have enough parents to step in and be there for those kids who may have needed temporary homes instead of permanent homes. Next question. Were you both on the same page about wanting to foster? So I think we sort of touched on this a little bit with the last question, where I think he was more open to it because he grew up in a foster care situation, not where he was in foster care, but where his parents were foster parents. And so he sort of knew like what that entailed. I never even knew what foster care was until I met his family. And so I was, like I said, pretty set on adoption, but I think God kind of moved in both of our hearts at the same time, where after we went to those meetings, we both just like felt in our hearts that it was just like we were meant to become foster parents. There was no question about it at that point. God really just changed our hearts and set us on that path.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was, or the biggest issue that people talk about with foster care is that you do accept someone into your family, you love them, and they're really part of your family, and then you have to go and say goodbye. And since I've had so many foster siblings, it's something that I'm used to, and I think that was something that Lana was a little bit worried about, and I was a little worried for her in terms of how it would affect her. And we technically still haven't really had to say goodbye to any of our kids, though it is looking like for our first placement that will be the case. But I think there's a part of it is just being willing to process through that grief or whatever we'll have to process through when the kids leave, knowing that we are able to provide a loving family for them for the 1.5 2 years that we will have them, and knowing that that is a right thing and a good thing to do.
Next question. What age range do you foster? So we decided that it would be a good idea to foster children that are younger than our youngest. Currently our bio kids are 4 and 3, and at the time when we got the twins, we were accepting of like mostly just infants 6 months and younger because we wanted to keep that age gap. But as our kids get older, we will continue to increase the age. So if our current placement, if they end up going home, then we will probably up our age to like, I don't know, maybe like 1 or 2 since our son is 3, because we do want to keep them younger. But the older the kids are, generally there's more of a need because more people are open to infants and younger children. And so we do want to eventually open up our home to older children. But right now, just because of the age of our own kids, we're keeping them younger.
Yeah, that was something that my parents did. So thanks, Mom and Dad, for giving us that little tactic. But we don't want our kids to feel like there's competition between the foster children that we're accepting into our home. And so one healthy way that we figured that might be possible would be by keeping them 1.5 to 2 years younger than our youngest. So it's kind of what we've been doing. And then we figure as our kids get older, our age range will increase. Largen. Oh, that's a word.
Not a word.
So that age range will grow, and then we will be able to accept other kids as well.
I think accepting children that are younger than your own children is also really smart, because a lot of times these children coming into the system have a lot of trauma, and they tend to lash out or have certain behaviors because of that trauma, and it's not their fault, but it's because of what they went through, and that can sometimes have negative effects on your own children, and they can get hurt, or it could be a dangerous situation for them. And so having the children we foster be younger than our own children ensures that our children are safe, that they're old enough to be able to tell us if something is going on with a younger child, so we can sort of address that together as a family. So mostly for safety reasons, and also like not to upset the birth order, because Kenley, our oldest, is used to being the oldest, and if we bring in another kid that's older than her and suddenly like, they're the boss, and not that she should be acting bossy, but I feel like it would create more conflict. And so we feel like keeping them in birth order just kind of makes it easier to accept a new kid into the home. They'll be more accepting, there'll be less conflicts, and I just feel like it makes it a little bit easier. Next question. What does the process look like to become licensed foster parents? So
you did most of the work.
Yeah.
So
I sort of started this. I reached out to DCFS, and then I reached out to like 3 other foster care agencies in our area, and I did not hear anything back for like 6 months. And I don't know if it was because they were like super backed up or something, but it was really frustrating because I would email, I would call, and I really just didn't get anything back. But I was persistent, and there was one agency actually on Google that had terrible reviews, and all the other ones had better reviews, which is why I reached out to them. And so I reached out to the last one in our area that I had been avoiding, and they got back to me like right away. And honestly, our experience with them
experience has been fun.
Has been amazing. Yeah, like they've been awesome. I think you just really have to be persistent. You would think that if they're needing foster parents that they would be like on it and like calling you back, but you really have to be like on it for them. And it makes sense because they're so backlogged because they have so many kids coming into the system, and social workers are really like overworked and they have way too many cases. You know, it's hard because it's easy to get frustrated with them, but you also just have to remember that there's a lot of kids that need help and there's not enough people out there to help them, especially working at these agencies or at DCFS or whatever. But anyway, to get back to it, so once I got a call back, we scheduled a visit. Someone came out to our home and she checked it, made sure it was safe, made sure there was room for the kids. Then she gave us a stack of paperwork. And so we filled that out. We had to get physicals, we had to get like certain vaccines and shots and make sure we were healthy. And then after we submitted all of our paperwork, we had to do online classes. You can choose to do online classes or you can choose to do in-person classes. Ours were, how long did it take?
It was 40 hours worth of e-learning, and I thought it was going to be like e-learning you could get through really fast, but it was actually legitimately 40 hours worth, and you have to do it or complete it within 30 days. So we pretty much spent all of our evenings after the kids were down going through the training.
Yeah, and they were really helpful. It was good stuff. It was, you know, how to deal with kids with trauma, how to deal with grief, how to deal with sexual abuse, because you need to be prepared for all these situations because you don't know what you're going to get. And so even though it was a lot of work and it took a long time, I am happy that we had that education because I think it prepared us a lot.
So typically they say that process takes like years to get licensed, and I think we thought it was going to be a little bit longer.
Like a year.
But after they originally get in contact, and it probably took like 6 months until our agency like reached out to us. From that point on, that was in November, is when the whole process started, when we had someone come out, we did all our physicals and all that stuff. Our training we did in all of January, and then some follow-up training in February, and then we were done, I think in March, we were licensed.
And then we had our final home study, which is an interview where they come through, they do like a walkthrough of your house, they interview you, they interview your spouse, they interview the children that are living in your home. That's probably like the thing that people who are being licensed are like most scared about, is this home study. Every county I'm sure is different. For us it was fairly easy. They just like checked to make sure the water wasn't too hot. Well,
and there's a big list of things that they give you, so you can just make sure all that's in order, and then it really wasn't that bad. And then the interview was probably the longest part of that process.
Yeah, that was in March, and we were licensed by April, and then we got our first placement the first week of May. So it took like 6 months maybe from start to finish, like after we actually got in touch with the agency. But I think 6 months is considered pretty quick because most places take longer, but thankfully we didn't have a bad experience getting licensed. It was fairly easy for us.
No, she got everything done really fast. All the paperwork, all the physicals. Chop, chop, chop.
Okay, so we are super passionate about this topic, so we could talk about it forever, but we are going to stop here because otherwise this video will be way too long, and we're going to have a second one that will be released next week. And so keep a lookout for that if you want to learn more about our experience with foster care. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see the rest of our videos. In case you're new here, my name is Alana.
I thought you were going to introduce me.
Sorry, okay. My name is Alana, and this is my husband.
I'm Jordan.
So my name is Jordan.
Amazing in the Netherlands. What do you want me to say? You have a little feather coming out here.
And I'll say something like, can you fix it?
Okay, that was horrible. We'll redo that one.